I'd want to go back before the start of my career. I think I'd want to go back to high school, and I'd want to tell myself, don't spend so much time chasing things that ultimately don't matter in the long run. So, for example, when I was younger, I thought I'd become a professional football player, like association football, right? Soccer. Or I wanted to do a professional American football player. And I had a distant shot at both. And so, but what it did is I spent enormous amounts of energy chasing these goals where the odds were tiny and the long-term meaning, I think maybe, was just pretty shallow. At the end of the day, it's like a lot of things just like, I have to get a ball over a finish line, or I play golf now. I have to get a ball into a hole. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with enjoying that. But I think I wish I'd understood earlier the difference between entertainment, light entertainment, and mastery, and how it drains so much of your time. And I think I'd try and tell myself to go deeper into, how do I become better in relationships and communication and building wisdom and building value and building real expertise?
AI is, of course, all the rage these days. It's hard to open a bit of software or a website or a news article even without seeing it mentioned. But for a business, what does this mean? It's not as simple as it sounds. It's not a case of just throw an AI agent here or an LLM there and suddenly your business becomes a unicorn overnight. The key, as with all things management, leadership, business related, is often in the strategy. How you do it matters as much, if not more, than what you're doing. And that has been a bit of a recurring theme on the podcast this year. But to merge these two competing points, differing points, these two perspectives, if you like, my guest today is Mr. Patrick Bell. He is an expert in AI transformation. He helps business leaders generate and implement an AI strategy that will actually succeed. So we'll be talking today about the challenges of doing that, why so many businesses from the outside seem to be winning at all things AI, but the truth from the inside is often one of failure, missteps, confusion, lack of clarity. We'll talk about what all of this means for leadership and how AI and other emerging technologies are beginning to show the cracks in a lot of leadership approaches. We'll also hear about Patrick's career and life journey so far. He's had a pretty interesting one. He's got a very unique perspective, having worked across several very different cultures, both in a business and social sense. And it's a really interesting conversation. Patrick's got a great perspective, a great way of telling the stories as well. And I'm sure you're going to get loads from this episode, so do stick around. And we'll be talking a lot about technology today. And if you are one of those leaders of technology, if you're a technical leader, you've probably been promoted or started your business because of what you know. But then you're either left as a new technical manager to figure out this leadership thing all by yourself, or if you founded the business, then obviously you're by yourself, unless you've got a partner. But even then, and you can very soon feel like you're struggling to keep your head above the leadership waters. Well, you're in the right place because this podcast is exactly here for people like you. And to take that a step further, to expand your knowledge, to feel less abandoned or pushed in at the deep end, perhaps start swimming in leadership waters with a bit more confidence, do come and join my Integrity Leaders online leadership community. It is there to give those emerging technical leaders real-world guidance, access to a community of your peers, and some practical frameworks and tools so that you can lead with confidence instead of trying to guess your way through it all of the time. Because as any new manager, new founder will know, that gets exhausting really quickly. The website is down in the show notes. It's also on the screen if you're watching the video. It's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. I've recently revamped the Leadership Heroes quiz. It's now the Leadership Heroes and Archetypes quiz. You'll find that on the resources page of that very website that I've just mentioned. So do give that quiz a go and let me know what you think. It'll help you identify or surface some of the key challenges that you might be experiencing right now in your leadership. And for the added fun part, it will also help you choose or suggest for you a leadership hero from a sci-fi universal world that you may or may not be familiar with. You don't have to be a sci-fi nerd, but it helps. So anyway, plenty there for you to get your teeth stuck into. And for now, let's get Patrick on the show and get into this conversation.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Patrick, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It is lovely to have you on the show. We're going to have a great conversation today about AI and leadership and all sorts of other things, no doubt. So yes, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, David, for having me. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be in the room with you today.
Well, the feeling's mutual. Very happy virtual room today, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So we'll kick off. I'm going to push you in at the deep end a little bit. Tell us a bit about your career so far, your origin story, if you will. How did you get here? What do you do? Why do you do it? All of that sort of thing.
The origin story, we have a short time, but if I go too long, just cut me off because it can go a long way. So just to set it straight from the beginning, I'm not American. I'm a proud member of the 51st state, also known as Canada. And I'm not sure if it's so proud about that anyway, but I left Canada in 2020. But I should back up because born and raised in Canada, although I spent some time living and growing up in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. A lot of my family's from Southern Africa, and it kind of gave me a thirst for travel. When I was 22, did some college in Canada, went to police college actually, and graduated. And I thought before I get into that, I want to do some travel and kind of do some, it was mission work in a sense, but I had a chance to go to Europe. And so I went to Europe, lived in Austria, worked in communist Eastern Europe. Met my wife, who is from California, and decided that she was going to be a lot better for me than police work. And so I moved to California, got married, and have been married now, 36 years or something. So it's been a good journey. We went to grad school together. We ended up going and teaching English conversation in Japan for a year. We stayed for 12 years, ended up owning the schools that we were working in. At that point, I had to learn how to grow a business and all of that. It was a very competitive environment. So I started learning from, the great Jay Abraham and put 10,000 hours into how to grow. And we put all of our competition out of business, literally, in our two cities we were in. And, a lot of reasons, not just my brilliance or anything like that. It was, just hiring people that love people. And, that was kind of just a good lesson that, anyway, 12 years in Japan was enough. We had 3 kids in Japan. Wanted to get them out of that system. So we did what normal people do. Of course, we moved to Nairobi, Kenya. And that was a strange, and we could go into Kenya's story a long time, but I'd done my MBA online from Regent University in Virginia. One of the profs was from Kenya. He's like, hey, we have a safari company. Come on over and be our marketing director. And I'm like, this is the dream job. And so we decided to leave Japan. We sold the schools, went to Kenya. Unfortunately, we went to Kenya 2 weeks before the post-election violence. And the day I arrived, my Kenyan partner said, well, your work permit was rejected. And then 2 weeks later, the post-election violence. And then he says, well, now there's no safaris. So just start consulting or something, keep your head down. We can talk about integrity because I was asked to pay a bribe of $2,500 to get my work permit and I refused. That cost me $25,000 right off the bat, just in import duties. we can circle back to that. But anyway, when I was there, I learned I was actually pretty good at business consulting. I ended up building software around business consulting, but we couldn't last in Kenya. We had to leave. So we spent 11 or 12 years in the US and Canada, worked on my software, taught university, taught college. Back in 2020, we left Canada again, went back to Kenya. We left Canada, went back to Kenya, had a really good season there. I was working for the company that I sold my software to, had a really good season, but never got my work permit again. And so my wife and I've been on the road for 3 years, living out of a suitcase, but now settled in Portugal. And so I'm now shifting into AI, as is most of the world. Not really looking at just automations like most people do, but doing a doctorate in business in artificial intelligence out of the Swiss School of Business and Management in Geneva. And, still young enough to, as they say, young enough to keep working and poor enough to can't retire. So just got to stay flexible. And so we're enjoying our time here. Not sure how long we'll stay, but that's the journey in a very small nutshell.
Okay, and quite the journey it is. Small world, but my driving instructor spent a long time in Rhodesia as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he was in the Royal Air Force in his 20s and 30s, and I think then he got sent out there originally by the RAF to work with the new Rhodesian Air Force at the time. He was quite a bit older than me, as you may be able to guess. And I think he ended up getting involved in like Air Force police driving courses and all sorts of things. So yeah,
wow,
small world. Don't know why that memory just triggered, but
it was a fantastic experience. But I was age 10 to 13, and I learned, there's a sport called rugby I'd never seen before, and I was very fast as a kid and loved that, and played rugby and football or soccer, I guess, and learned to play cricket a little bit, and just had a great time. And also was a part of, the schools at the time, which were segregated, and it's a boys' school, and, all the trouble I got into there. So it was overall a wonderful season, 3.5 years, 4 years there.
Yeah. Some controversial politics going on around
Absolutely.
the area, though. Trying to put that politely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Still, must have been a fascinating place to spend a few years. Not sure I would want to stay there much longer than that, though.
Yeah, my dad was part of had to join, as every man did, had to join the military then. And he always had good stories about it. But, I think I was clueless to politics. I didn't really care. When you're 12 years old or something, you don't care. It's just where your friends that day. And so I was very sheltered from all of that, thankfully. And went back to Canada and grew up in the old town, and for better or worse, it's just all part of the journey.
Absolutely. We're kind of going straight into the first question here, really, aren't we? Which is about these, I guess, the differences, but the similarities as well. I'm really curious about, particularly having spent time in like North America, Europe, Africa, and Japan. I mean, it's hard to think of four more distinct and different cultures, like at social level, but also in terms of their business cultures as well. So I'd really love to hear some of your insights, experiences, perhaps, about what you've learned from that journey about how businesses actually work. What are the differences? What are the similarities between those different business cultures, I guess?
Yeah, wow. Well, I think everyone starts with a standard or a certain framework or lens they see the world through. And my lens was primarily North American, Canadian, small town, small city. Then my lens grew a lot from my time living in Austria, working across Eastern Europe, traveling a lot of Europe. And then my lens grew a little bit from living in Rhodesia at the time as well. So I wasn't trained to go to Japan. I wasn't even trained for business. And I think a lot of the lessons, you look back, you can see them retrospectively, but it's very hard to see things in the moment. We knew that Japan was more structured and cautious and very time oriented. So, being on time is actually being late. You have to show up 5 minutes before your boss. Thankfully, generally my wife and I were the bosses, but we did try and run according to Japanese culture as well in there. But very cautious people, especially in the smaller city that we lived in. Kind of behind the times in many ways, though we did have a cell phone before our North American friends. Moving to Kenya was completely the opposite. You imagine you come from Japan, which is a very honor and trust-based society where you can literally leave your door open and be gone for 6 weeks, unlocked, and you come back, the mail's put inside on the step. If you left money out, it wouldn't be touched. And you trust people initially until they break your trust, which is almost never. Going to Kenya, we learned almost the opposite. People aren't on time. People would steal from us left and right, given the chance. We're always on our guard. And the people that we ran into were very wonderful as people, but often late, couldn't show up to work on time. And it was a much harder environment to be in because we came from such a structured environment. I mean, back to North America for some season of work. I think, we lived in Marin County, California, which is one of the most affluent counties in North America, and then lived in Kelowna, British Columbia, which is kind of a tech hub as well. And now we're back in Europe, which is very structured as well. So I think on the surface, a lot of these environments look completely different. But I think what surprised me looking back is that, the same problems keep showing up everywhere you go. You've got leaders are still struggling to get clear answers. Teams work hard. Maybe they're not often aligned. Decisions often take too long. I think in Japan, there had to be consensus. And it took a long time often. But then whenever the boss said we're doing something, everyone had to do it, like generally in business. But often, different places, maybe not clear ownership of who's actually going to accomplish a task and do they have accountability around it. And I think, some things of what I learned is that, often businesses don't break because of strategy or effort. They more likely break because the way people are used to doing their work, or not doing it, or the whole culture, the whole system underneath, the way decisions get made, the way information flows. Maybe all of that might not be clear or might not be sufficient. And once that starts to break down, chaos still follows. That's the challenge.
So I'm going to ask you a potentially difficult question, a bit off script, because I'm curious, something you said about Japanese working culture there and being a little bit behind the times. So a lot of what we in the Western world these days look at as modern management techniques originated in Japan in companies like Toyota, for example. It's things like Kanban and Agile and Kaizen and things like that. Was that something that you didn't experience while you were there, or just wasn't relevant to what you were doing, do you think? Or was it the wrong time? Or
Well, I think it was happening, the whole aspect of Kaizen, where you have these incremental improvements. And you could see it sometimes, like students that we'd have, they come in for conversation, but they might be working at City Hall or in a company. They'd tell their experiences. For example, like I even know, like in some of the bigger companies, that every person was expected to bring an improvement to the company every single week. And so you think about it, and they're all hyper-focused on that in some companies. So it'd be things like if a secretary would come in and say, then the boss would say, what improvement did you bring this week? And she said, I realized in my office, I have to walk back and forth from my desk to the photocopy machine. And I realized there's space to move it about 2 meters closer to my desk. And so I go back and forth to that so many times a day. And I literally can save 1 minute of time per day because I've shortened the distance I have to go. And so I'm saving 5 minutes a week. And they're like, oh, this is wonderful. Well done. I'm like, that's great. It's a great story. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, I found that they weren't very creative where I was. They were copycats. And I'm a very creative person. I like to think up new things all the time, but maybe it was the city I lived in was a very traditional city. And so I'd share something with a friend, and it's a bad idea when they start like sucking air in their teeth. They go, Bell Sensei, which means that's a dumb idea. And I faced that for years. Like I just wanted to try different things. And I was a little disappointed in that because I thought it wasn't a very creative environment for me to explore creative ideas. But I know also they have tremendous creativity with some of the things they come out with. And I mean, you watch game shows or something, they're hilarious because they have all these amazing fun things to watch. So, I could make a lot of a nice fun way of their culture, but I won't. But they're just, sumo guys, it's just so fun. And raising kids there in that environment was just a beautiful thing. So we have a lot of friends. We'd love to go back at some point. I could live there again. So, overall, a wonderful culture. Business was a challenge, but it could have been my city I lived in. So.
No, fair enough. And thank you for sharing. There's a lot of intriguing parts to that, I have to say. Such a great example as well of like the textbook incremental change, emphasis on incremental.
Yeah.
I love that. I really do. Such a cool story.
We can extrapolate that to any business, and we would do this with our staff, which actually made a difference for us. So, you think about like one time I had enough money, I wanted to go and buy a new car. I'd never bought a new car in my life, but in our city, there was a Honda dealer. So I walked into the Honda dealer and introduced myself, and they brought me a small laminated menu of drinks. And I could look at the menu and choose hot coffee or iced coffee, hot tea, iced tea, juice, any type of soda or water. And I thought, that's brilliant. I've never seen this. They're making me feel at home. And then my kids are there with me and they're offering them something. And I thought, well, you could take that into any situation. Like if you're running a hair salon or, contrast that to when I went to buy a car in Colorado after leaving Kenya. And I said, oh, I'm kind of thirsty. Is there a place to get a drink? And they say, well, hey, the drink machine's over there. Go and buy one yourself. Like what a different way of approaching a client or a prospect. So we had these things that we do in Japan with our staff, and we'd have regular meetings about how can we add more value to our client this month over what we did last month? How can we serve them at a higher level? How can we offer them greater benefit this month? How can we love them at a higher level? Things like that. And literally, I mentioned before, we gained a monopoly in our city. We literally put every other English conversation school out of business. Everyone closed their doors. They all said, oh, go to the Bell School. And we had a reputation for loving our students. But it was a very purposeful, it was just who we were. We just loved people. But it was also a strategy, I think, that anyone can adopt in their business to do a weekly workshop, with your staff and say, how can we love people better? How to serve them better this week? How do we offer them more benefit? How do we offer them more value? How do we care for them at a deeper level? And there's all kinds of little things you can do, starting with like a menu of drinks, because a drink costs you 50 cents. whatever. But it's
Yeah.
remarkable. People remark about it. And you can do a lot of things like that.
Yeah, and it's a memorable difference as well, isn't it? As you say, remarkable. I think that's a really powerful example as well of learning from cultural differences. I mean, you sort of see both in the UK, I think. It depends on which car dealership, for example, you happen to go into.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, it's probably not exclusive to cars, is it? But it's almost like a differentiation point now, isn't it? Like great service versus no, just tell the computer what you want. Well, you see it in fast food as well, for example.
Well, I think some of them are going to that. I wonder, as the world moves into AI, if there'll be a backlash around that and people will just demand, like, I'm not doing business with you unless you have a real person I can talk to, because I am a human being and I want to talk to a human being that cares about me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you're going to charge more, but I mean, that can be your unique selling proposition or whatever as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there definitely will be. In fact, I think I've even read about an example of that happening already, and I keep forgetting the name of the company where it happened. But they basically replaced their customer service team with AI chatbots, and then an amount of months or years later had to reverse that decision because customers were getting angry and frustrated at going around in the loop of an AI chatbot who didn't give them an answer and just wanted to talk to a person who probably could have solved it in about 2 seconds.
Right. I've seen it work well. I'm a company I was working with at Studio 98 .ai, and they provide AI employees. And they have a client that's a major energy company in the US. And so if, let's say, they're in Chicago where there's a snowstorm and everyone loses their power, their lines get flooded. Well, they'll have a certain number of people answering the phone. But no one wants to wait an hour to talk to someone when your lights are out. And so they realize that, like, if they can bring in an agent that can answer the phone in a human voice and have an actual conversation and escalate things if necessary, but people would rather talk to an agent within 20 seconds than wait an hour in line. And so they reduced the average wait time down under a minute. And if people needed to talk to someone, they still could. But they're not talking to just like a robot. It's, the voice actually sounded quite good and they were very empathetic, let's say. So at least they appeared to be. They're still, right, it's just still technology. But yeah, it was a good case.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example. I suppose it's like any technology, isn't it? Like, does it fit the use case you're trying to solve, the problem you're trying to solve with it? And I can see a case there where, like, timely, prompt response is the key. Then, yeah, of course.
Right.
I think there's a lot of companies, though, we won't mention any of their names, but there's some big ones who've made headlines recently, aren't there, who are, their use case is less about the user or the customer. It's more about their own bottom line, not having to pay people. Which I think is less good and not the way forward. But I'm probably biased because I'm a human.
Absolutely. And that's okay.
Yeah. And you hit on another interesting point about AI that I think we have to talk about as well. First of all, just the letters AI, I think, and this might be me getting on my soapbox a little bit, I think that's part of the problem with why it's not being properly or used to its best effect. Because it's misunderstanding, almost misrepresenting what it is, particularly that I, because it's not actually intelligent, is it? Unless I've misunderstood the technology, it's not thinking. It's following a series of patterns and protocols and algorithms to produce the most likely average next word or next result or whatever the application is. Do you agree or disagree? What do you think? What's the answer? Is there one? Don't know.
Okay. So I don't know if there's an answer, but it's a good rabbit trail we can go down.
Absolutely.
Okay. AI can help us know everything in the world that can be known cheaply. So we no longer have to guess about things. There's some challenges in here. I can have a conversation with my wife, which let's say we're saying, I wonder what that means as we're reading something, like what are the deeper meanings behind that? Now I can say, and I'm learning to say, would you like me to check ChatGPT for some greater context? Because the moment I pick up my phone, I'm now looking at my phone, not my wife. So I have to be careful of that. It doesn't let me dominate, doesn't come in between relationship. But sometimes you want to explore something. So I like, hey, let's get some deeper context. And then I ask ChatGPT about a certain situation, and it gives me a much deeper context about it. And then I put the phone down. We continue our conversation. So we can go down that way. Okay, intelligence. I'm not sure it's intelligence so much, though it might be. As a thinking partner, it's definitely helpful. I'm also in education. And here's what frustrates me. Education is like the slowest moving industry, next to lumber, something. You have a class that says, we want to learn, this is our outcome, this is our level, and we're going to give you 12 weeks to achieve that outcome. And now AI comes in the picture, and I could literally achieve that in a day. I got 3 kids in grad school, and they all could do it if they wanted, but they refuse to because they don't want to shortcut their own learning. So they're pretty smart with that. But they could achieve that outcome in a day. And now professors know that. And they go, well, no, don't use AI. Just put that aside, and we're going to design tools to catch you if you're using AI. But we want you to achieve this outcome. Instead of thinking, wow, Patrick has an IQ of, let's say, I'll give myself 120, a little bit above average. And now with AI, instead of achieving this outcome, I can double or triple or 10x the outcome I could do using AI. And so why not say, look, instead of this outcome, I want you to do this incredible outcome, which might actually solve some challenges in the world, and use AI as much as you can. Just show what you used. We're going to applaud you for it, and we're going to learn from that. And instead, we're just saying, no, just stick here. Don't go any further than the status quo. But, for a university or school to change a curriculum, it could take a couple years to get all the permissions and goes through all the boards to change it. And by the time we get there, it's going to be moved on. Like, how could you possibly create a class on prompt engineering that's going to be approved in 2 years, which will be completely irrelevant next year or in 6 months? So I think we can challenge AI to help us maybe not be more intelligent, but to come up with greater outcomes. So when I'm talking to whatever I just use ChatGPT mostly. I think I want to accomplish this. And whatever comes back to me, I said, wait, let's go deeper than that. Let's go 3 levels deeper. And it's like, oh, do you mean this? And I was like, well, that's pretty good. I go, no, I want you to go deeper still. And then it's like, gives me something else. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really good. I would have never thought of that on my own. And I would have never thought that deep sitting around a group of friends. So I'm not sure it's helping me more intelligent. I'm not sure the word is then. Because am I now more intelligent that I've come up with something? Or is that creativity?
I mean, a lot of people argue it's making us less intelligent and less creative. Just to play devil's advocate for a moment there. So the example of your kids not using it for their papers, I think there's an excellent bit of self-awareness and future-looking thought going on there, and I applaud that. But it's again, so in that learning context, for example, it's about what is the outcome. Is the outcome produce a written paper, or is the outcome learn about the subject of the written paper? Because all the paper is at the end of the day is demonstrating what you've learned, isn't it? So if you're skipping the learning bit, I would argue you're not producing the right outcome in that context. And I think that can be extrapolated to work, business, society. I mean, it's a similar thing as people used to complain about with the search engine and the internet more widely. Like suddenly nobody has to do research anymore because they can just type it in and they get the answer in seconds. And that's kind of, I don't know. I'm on the fence a little bit, but I may be leaning towards the AI skeptic side right now, but I do go back and forth.
So let's look at, where education's come from. Like growing up a little bit in Rhodesia, I had a British curriculum. I had to learn all the kings of England and queens of England and all this stuff. And I think I did in Canada as well. And I'm like, I always wonder, why am I learning, the wives of King Henry VIII? Does it really matter? So we moved from we call it just in case learning, right? You learn it just in case you need to bring it out in the conversation to look smart, to just in time learning. Like, how can I get stuff in the time I need to do it? That's just been, that whole just in time has now been sped up and magnified. How many degrees? I have no idea. But when I look at the bulk of what I've done in all my education, so I have a college degree or diploma in law enforcement. I have a bachelor's degree in English. I have a master's degree in intercultural studies. I have an MBA in international business. And you say, what did you learn from that? I'm like, I couldn't tell you any of the lessons I learned in one sense. They all they shaped me into being a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more articulate, a little bit wiser. But most stuff kind of comes in, filters a little bit, and then after you pass the test, you're done. Like I had 9 years of French. I could pass every test, but get me in a speaking environment, I didn't have a clue what to say because that's how they taught me in Canada. So what is can AI help us get that information, help us achieve a goal? How does it really help you unless you're out doing things in the real world anyway? It's really tough. And I think sometimes you have to use AI just to survive in so many things, just writing emails. And are we losing our ability? Yes. There used to be a time when cursive handwriting was honored and valued, and someone's handwriting was a reflection of their character and all that. That days are done. I wish it was back. Not for my sake, because I'd look like a bumbling idiot with my handwriting. But I do appreciate those who have gorgeous handwriting. It's just something beautiful to look at. But now we type out something so quick and we get it done. And the problem is the pressure that AI forces upon us. Like it forces managers to make decisions faster and companies to do things faster and all that. Think of an analogy like you're in business and you're on, let's say you're on your train of business, you're heading down the tracks. Your competitor is now next to you on the tracks. They didn't tell you about this, but up ahead is a 30-degree slope. And at the bottom of the slope is a river, but the bridge hasn't been built yet. And everyone is at breakneck speed on this 30-degree slope on their train, and they're doing everything they can. The AI is building the bridge, and how do we transform our company and get this thing built before that train hits it? Because if we don't do it, the competitor might, and they're going to keep going and they're going to put us out of business. But building that bridge, we're making all kinds of mistakes. So many things we don't see. We're not building it structurally well. And we don't know if we're going to survive it anyway. But you can't avoid building the bridge. Like the pressure on companies is too great. And those that ignore AI could go out of business completely. And then there's AI companies that are far above our level that make the decisions for us and change the models again, weeks later after they did it the first time. And how do we keep up? Like the pressure to keep up and the pressure to make decisions is so hard. And when an organization comes under pressure, it starts to break. So pressure always exposes what's weak in a system, right? And if management is weak and management hasn't structured things well, and there isn't clear accountability, and the pressure starts getting on people, and then they get political, and then they start protecting their own behinds, and they start fudging reports to the CEO and blaming others. And so now management doesn't have a clear picture of what's really happening because people aren't being truthful anymore. All these kind of things happen under pressure. And you might have to let people go because AI can now do their job better than they can. But what happens? Oh, she's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. Can you really let her go? Like, are you willing to take that moral responsibility on? And there's a pressure again on the executives. Like, it's the craziness of this world we're in, David, is just, I don't even know. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's so much complexity around it. And you're also right, I think, like businesses have to start using it because their competitors probably already are. I do worry, though, there's this tension, I think, between quality and speed. And I think AI is excellent if the main thing you need to do is be first, do it fastest, produce something that's okay-ish, good enough, average, before anyone else does. And if the first one who does it wins, that's fine. That's all you need. But I do think we're losing something. So, I mean, caveat this, of course, with it depends on the application, it depends on the business, the industry, as it always does, what you're actually using it for. I don't know. I mean, my experience of it is pretty limited. I use it for like transcribing things and summarizing transcriptions and doing the first draft of my newsletter and things like that. But I don't think it's actually saving me time in, say, the newsletter writing process, for example, because I'm so paranoid about it appearing as though AI has written it, and that I can immediately detect the AI patterns in there, like the M dashes, the rule of threes, the certain words that crop up every other sentence that I hate now. And so you end up editing it anyway, or you might as well have just written it from scratch. So, but then there's other companies, probably my competitors, who care less about that. So by all the time I'm spending editing an AI output to produce something that I feel sounds like me and is sufficiently unique, they've already published it 3 hours before I started and probably didn't even read it, but it's good enough because someone else got there first. And I think that tension, I don't know, it's always sort of been there in business, hasn't it? I just feel like the acceleration of it as a result of this new technology is a worry for business, for industry, for the long-term sustainability of whole economies, frankly.
Yeah, and there's so many things that are beyond my expertise there.
Well,
what's going to happen in like the future, like we have no idea. I know for certain things, it helps me formulate my writing at a higher level. So I'm a good writer. I've won an award for fiction writing. I've written nonfiction books. I'm doing a dissertation. It's 200 plus pages. So I know how to write well, but sometimes when I load something into AI and say, can you get me a better output than this? It writes it fast and beautifully. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. And I don't think I could have done that. So I think it just depends on what you're looking for. AI at scale often doesn't work. In the company I came out of, for 6 months consulting inside of that, they would build AI agents. But once in a while, the AI agent just hallucinates and does its own thing. And no one can figure out why. So if the agent's calling someone, talking to them about getting on my calendar, for example, but starts talking about customer service, and you go, wait, this is way off script. You weren't programmed to do that. Why did you start doing that? It just says, oh yeah, you're right. But no one can figure out why it did that. And so I know caution has to be taken with AI, and there does have to be a human in the loop. And some companies will do that very well. And, I found that the bigger companies, they have the resources to do that. And even the mid-sized companies often don't. They have to train up their people from the inside to get things done. And they're maybe not well trained, and smaller businesses are just kind of keep their head above water as well. So what do? I don't know.
Yeah. It's that pressure to compete, I think, you hit the nail on the head. That's the crux of it. I think everyone is rushing into it in ways that they wouldn't if they weren't feeling that pressure. As for that hallucination thing, that sort of feels to me like something you'd see in a futuristic sci-fi horror film where like the AI has become self-aware and it's just trying not to give itself away.
Interesting.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, you're right, I made a mistake, I won't do that again.
Yeah. And meanwhile, in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me is plotting to kill your family or something, yeah. Maybe there's a script there. Someone must have made that.
I'm sure they've already made it, and there's probably 100 scripts out there waiting to get done.
Absolutely. Sure. Right. Anyway, enough of my conspiracy theories about
That's
AI.
right.
Let's. So you sort of touched on this already, I think, about an example of AI where it didn't work at scale. But I think another thing with this, as with any new technology, we've seen it before with the internet and mobile phones and other things before. There's so much hype around it. Yeah. It's perceived as successful, even when it's not. Maybe that's just surface level. Why is it, do you think, that so many of them look successful from the outside, but they're actually, in reality, they failed or they've missed the mark?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. I think it's because most companies are measuring activity and not outcomes. So, and I saw this in a company that I was recently involved in. So, on the surface, things look great. You got people, they can run pilots and they can maybe learn how to use tools, and maybe there's built a dashboard around it. And people can say, hey, we're doing AI, but underneath, nothing fundamental has changed. And so you have to have accountability. I think accountability is the key thing, and people don't want to be accountable. When you say, think about this. If a company starts and they say, hey, let's just have everyone experiment with AI in your division and see what you can do and see what you can come up with. That's really fun to do. And then marketing reports, oh, I built this agent, or I've experimented and I can now do this. But when the moment they say, okay, let's build an agent around that process, and we need to track the outcomes. And now people are now accountable. And that's where I think people start pushing back. So it's one thing to experiment. It's another thing to say this initiative owns a real business outcome and Joe is responsible for it, right? And I don't think companies want to make that shift. So you have all this false progress, like, work's happening, but it's not tied to clear ownership. And it's not tied to financial impact. And no one's really responsible if it doesn't deliver. So you have, overall performance won't move. And like I mentioned before, leaders often don't get clear visibility into what's actually happening. So they rely on updates that might sound good, but underneath someone's protecting what they weren't able to be accountable for. And so it looks like progress, but it hasn't crossed the line into real measurable value. And that's why I think, initiatives stall when it becomes time to scale, because they don't have the structural governance around it.
That feels like a somewhat classic challenge of leadership anyway, this whole point around accountability.
Yep.
That's that. I mean, you could look at change management, you could look at major projects, you could look at just the way the average business operates and monitors output and outcomes and what its people are doing. But at the same time, I think when applied to AI and these sort of new initiatives around technology as well, not just AI itself, but any kind of technological change, it feels like worse and more important somehow, doesn't it? Do you think, or am I giving it the benefit of the doubt too much?
No, I think you're right. It comes back to a leadership issue.
Mm.
And, as the way we do work today, there's a lot of culture in work. And we talk about culture is not people necessarily of other cultures, but the way I show up, the way I do my work, the way that I've been trained to be diligent or not, to give it my best effort or not, to be accountable to a solution or not. Okay, so we know from change management, for example, my numbers might be a little bit off, so no one will write me and rebuke me on this. But for example, let's say you have a work, they normally do certain things, and I show up every week and I go to my staff meetings and all that. I'm going to work on this and that. So, but what if the boss comes to me on Monday morning and says, Patrick, what do you have planned for this week? And I say, well, I'm going to do these 10 things. And he'll say, well, no, you can't. Those 10 things should take you 2 days. What about this and that? It's like, oh, okay, I could do that and that. It's like, this is not in your, you don't purview. You don't need to do that. Knocks a couple things off, adds a few things. And now he says, this is what you could do this week. Would you agree? And I'd say, yeah, I should be able to get that done. He goes, oh, great. I'm going to come back on Friday afternoon and see if you've accomplished that. So we know if we set up that structure, instantly my productivity goes up 20%, like just out of the gate. Like that's the baseline. So that's just general business management competence. And if a manager or owner, founder, whatever his role is, he's got responsible for people. If he's not doing that kind of thing, somehow his people will do whatever they want. And some people don't like that, saying, oh, it's too, authoritarian or whatever, big brother. We don't want that environment. You're going to find some way to measure what people say they're going to do and what they actually do. And if you observe people, it'll go up what they actually deliver. That's just been proven. So with AI coming in, the problem is, like we talked about, all the pressure. And now we have maybe untrained people trying to do things they weren't trained to do before. And managers who don't know how to manage AI initiatives. And then someone comes up with their framework and they explore it, and someone comes up with that and they have an initiative that fails. And they're like, this is too crazy. I don't even know what to do here. It's too overwhelming. I don't even know if I want to get involved, because no one's trained how to manage AI transformation. So, traditional frameworks could look at, hey, let's do a vision and readiness. Let's pick a pilot project. Let's work on it. Let's make sure that works. Okay, well, let's scale it up and let's do change management with our team and training, and then accountability, and we can measure things. And that's great, except transformation doesn't work sequentially. It operates in waves, and you can be doing different things at the same time. But through all of that, you have to worry about governance and change management and culture and ethics that all have to bleed into everything. And so when you're in one phase, managers today need to know, what am I looking for? How do I manage this? What questions should I be asking? And no one's written that playbook yet. So that's a big challenge.
I mean, the big brother point, I get what you're saying. And I've probably been one of those people. But, you're right. There's got to be a way of monitoring and measuring outcomes. But I think there's also a way of doing that doesn't involve standing over people's shoulders all the time in the way that traditional managers do, and the way, a lot of businesses default to. And that, to me, is the difference between leadership and management. It's that leadership bit that you add on top, so that you're not acting like the master of the workhouse sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting subjects, which I wish we had more time to dig deeper into. Maybe we could start writing that playbook as we go. But
well, it's partly what I'm doing my dissertation on.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
I'm just seeing, besides almost 1,000 hours embedded in a company and other case studies and looking at all the literature that's coming out at hyperspeed now and doing surveys over hundreds of CEOs, these are the kind of things that are just coming out, and people don't know. The management is tough for the managers. So a lot of overconfidence, but a lot of breaking as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, apart from these things and the accountability structures and everything else that we just talked about, is there anything else that you think leaders need to change before they try and scale AI across their business?
Well, yeah, great question. I think they need to stop thinking like adopters and start thinking more like operators or leaders who ask, do we have the structure to control this hyperspeed transitions we are going to face? So, before you scale anything, you've got to have different things in place. Like, first, you have to have clear ownership. Everything has to be tied to a real owner with a real outcome. So, I've seen things where maybe a team builds an AI workflow, and maybe it's like automating client reporting or generating marketing content, and it works initially, but no one owns the result. So an example would be the marketing assistant now says, my agent that I've helped build can now post content on social media. Great. So what? Does it drive traffic? Who owns that? Who is actually responsible for that outcome? So someone has to own the result, and you have to be clear about what the result is. You can't just assume that someone else is handling anything. So I think that's the first step for managers. It's owners. It's not a technology failure. It's an ownership failure. So you got ownership, you got visibility. Leaders need to see what's actually working. So you might have 5 to 10 different AI-driven workflows running, like content generation, whatever, automations. And on the surface, it might look like progress. But when you ask, okay, how much time did this actually solve? Like, let's put numbers to it. All the time you thought about it, we built it. How much did this actually save? Did it actually reduce cost? By how much? Did it improve output quality? By how much? And so there's often just no clean answer. It's like, I don't know. So you have all this motion, but you have no measurement. So you've got the ownership, you got visibility. And I think third, owners need decision discipline. They need to figure out a way of what gets funded, what gets stopped, what gets scaled. So again, going back to multiple AI experiments, different team members testing tools, building automations, trying approaches. And so some of them don't get scaled, and you have to go, why? And if you can't figure out why, it's probably because there's no agreed process that says, this is what success means. This is how you roll out things. This is when we kill a project. And so everything sits in this like gray zone. Well, it's kind of useful. And I think that's where value gets stuck. And that's where managers need to improve.
Yeah, all sounds good to me, definitely. I think there are quite a few common themes there in conversations I've had before with innovation specialists, for example. I mean, that's probably not a surprise, but change management, again, not a surprise that's come up before, but also just generally like leadership management good practice. I think there's lessons there that are applicable to all sorts of things. And I think that's comforting in a way that we can apply this to AI adoption as well. So I think, as we've seen already a few times today, like the pressure, the daunting nature of this hyper fast new technology, I think maybe that is a bit comforting to the human element, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is everything I'm finding in my doctoral research. This is not a technology problem. This is a leadership and governance problem. And AI is exposing weak leadership, and it's doing it quickly. And like I did a deep discovery for a business, mid-sized company, retail company. And I basically said, okay, and it took me 17 or 20 pages or something like that to say, basically, your company is not ready for AI. It will break whatever it touches because there's no good structure in the company. And the guy got really mad at me. And it's like, why the heck? I mean, you're supposed to be my friend even. You're getting mad at me. But I think I exposed his weaknesses as a manager. And that was hard for him. I wasn't there to like pat him on the back saying everything's going to be fine. He wanted to know really what's the roadmap ahead. And I'm like, the roadmap is before you touch AI with any of your people, get your structure and your management in place and start having disciplined staff who do what they say they're going to do. So didn't go over well with him though. But truth sometimes it hurts when you don't see it yourself.
It often strikes me, those kinds of conversations, like that. It's no surprise it didn't go over well, because the sort of managers who would take that feedback well probably wouldn't be in that position to start with, because they would be more open to learning, improvement, and, you know, hearing about the things that they themselves have done wrong, perhaps.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe I'm a cynic.
I think you're right there.
All right. So, Patrick, I've got lost down the AI rabbit hole, as we knew we would, but it has been a really interesting conversation. I do have a couple of other little questions I'll add on. We'll skip a few for the sake of time. One that I always ask now, because it's led to some really interesting answers, I think, anyway. And that is, what is your best memory of being led?
My first reaction goes to my wife, actually, because my wife has a gift of leadership. And one of the advantages of walking through life with someone you're deeply aligned with is that, you know, when one person gets discouraged, you know, falls down, loses clarity, gets, depressed, the other person can pick them up and help things and keep things steady. And there have, of course, been seasons in my life, you know, I'm 61, seasons in my life, maybe where I wasn't at my best or wasn't having a great day or a great week. And she would step in and say, no, that's not the direction we're going. This is the direction we're going. This is the direction we're thinking. Let's go there. And because of that, I'm a much better man today. And they say, you know, people say 1 + 1 is 2, but it's really 1 + 1 is 11, right? Walking together with someone. As I told my boys, as they're, you know, one just got married, one's thinking about it. If you find the right partner in life, you're going to 10x whatever you do. But if you get the wrong partner, you will do 1/10 of what you've imagined. And so, my wife is a leader, and I look at that and I go, it's such a privilege to walk with a good leader. Because leadership isn't always about hierarchy, right? Sometimes leadership just comes from the person that can see most clearly in the moment. And, you know, my wife's been that person that can help me see more accurately, like if stress is on. And that's a huge gift. I've also been fortunate to work with some strong business leaders, you know, who taught me about operational excellence, what that actually looks like. It's not about charisma. It's not about, you know, big talk. It's more about consistency and clarity and follow through and creating environments where people can do their best work. And I think over time, I just think, you know, great leadership often looks quieter than people expect.
Yeah, I would sort of echo that from the opposite perspective. That point about great leadership is often quieter. I've learned that lesson by having the opposite of bad leadership being loud.
We all have.
Yeah, well, quite. I don't like to assume, but
no, it's working for when you sit under a narcissist boss for several years, and then you can start seeing it in others, and your radar for it goes up, and you realize, wow, that was really a toxic environment, and I'm going to now avoid that. Now that I am in my 60s, I have the license to give myself to avoid that in the future. I don't care if the person pays me $1 million a year. I will not work for him if he's a narcissist, for example. And other people are just humble, very smart, very astute, but humble and just down to earth. And it's like, hey, I want to work with that person. So.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I wouldn't do it, mind you. I mean, $1 million, that's quite a lot. I'd maybe do 6 months, pay the mortgage off, and then stop. Like, I think I could manage that. But yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, that comes down to now. Like, I was making great money before in a company I was working for several years ago, and then the boss was a narcissist. I won't mention the company, obviously. But it was also the way they marketed was just really deceptive across the board. I tell my wife, it was institutionalized deception. And if I'm in leadership in that company, which I was, then that deception now becomes part of what I do as a leader, and I'm aligned with that. And that takes a hit on your integrity and your reputation. So what is your reputation worth? Is there a number to it? And how can you justify it? And maybe I don't even want to explore that number. People, listeners, viewers can think of that. They're probably going, I'm in that myself. And yeah, it'd be I don't know if I could do it anymore, David. I've done it before, and I love sleeping well at night. I just love it. So.
Yeah, me too. I said it might partly in jest, but I mean, you're right. I mean, there's working for the narcissist who just has like the wildly overinflated opinion of themselves. And then there's working for like the deceptive, malignant narcissist who is also doing harm upon the world through business practices or whatever.
And that's a very good way. Yeah. So
that is absolutely different.
I could work for a narcissist for 6 or 8 months if he's paying me $1 million.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my point. But yeah, the other category, not so much. I think you've only got two choices there, 3 outcomes, isn't it? Like your choice is, do I go along with the lie or not? And if the answer is not, there's 2 outcomes there, isn't there? You either go against the lie and tell the truth, in which case you probably get fired, or you quit. Either way, you're not staying there. So.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, interesting. But lovely story and lovely way of talking about your wife as well. Loved that. That's so true. I asked you for a lesson about leadership and you gave us one about life. So thank you.
Yeah. Tangents.
Absolutely. No, that's the best bits. So I only have 2 questions left, but they're fun questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you could go back in time to the start of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah. I'd want to go back before the start of my career. I think I'd want to go back to high school.
Okay.
And I'd want to tell myself, don't spend so much time chasing things that ultimately don't matter in the long run. So, for example, when I was younger, I thought I'd become a professional football player, like association football, right? Soccer. Or I wanted to do a professional American football player. And I had a distant shot at both. And so, but what it did is I spent enormous amounts of energy chasing these goals where the odds were tiny and the long-term meaning, I think maybe, was just pretty shallow. At the end of the day, it's like a lot of things just like, I have to get a ball over a finish line, or I play golf now. I have to get a ball into a hole. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with enjoying that. But I think I wish I'd understood earlier the difference between entertainment, light entertainment, and mastery, and how it drains so much of your time. And And I think I'd try and tell myself to go deeper into how do I become better in relationships and communication and building wisdom and building value and building real expertise. So now I like to go and play golf, but it's more about the relationship of the person I'm with, and the experience of it walking on beautiful green grass rather than trying to get a good score. I did get to play golf with a former pro who was 85 years old at the time, former PGA pro, 85, little short man. He outdrove me on every hole. And I got angry once, a little bit upset. And he goes, "Patrick, you're not good enough to get angry." I'm like, oh, man, it's probably right on.
Ouch.
Yeah. No, it was said in jest or something, but I'll never forget that. And so, like, when I was younger, I'm chasing recognition and excitement and all those things about identity. But I think I'd go back and see if I could help myself just think, wait, where can you become really good at? What can you become a deep expert in? What can you do that creates more meaning, or what actually lasts? What can compound over your life? For example, I speak highly of my wife, but she's just gifted as a communicator and a networker. And she has people that love her. We say between us, we got 100 friends. She's got 98 of them, and she doesn't know much about AI. She knows a little. She doesn't care. But her schedule's full helping people through the day, just friends who are just in a mess. And it's like that 6 days a week at least. So she has a huge impact on people and in their lives. And I think, oh, it's not my gift, but I could have been a lot better at it. So just one little piece of advice if we have time. I didn't know this till I was 30. Someone said to me, don't try and spend all your time being interesting. Spend time being interested. My whole family, they're Irish, whatever, and from Africa and Canada. And everyone just tries to be interesting all the time. Tell the greatest story about what you did. And you get in the room and no one asked me a question. And I thought, that's interesting. Why don't I become the person to ask good questions? How was your day? What else did she say? Right? Things like that. So become interested. So
yeah, I love that lesson. I'm sort of the same. Mostly because if you ask the questions, you'd have to talk as much, and I'm pretty lazy. So, But it's a good leadership lesson as well, though, not just for life. Like the best leaders are the ones who make you feel like seen and listened to. And one of the best ways of doing that is asking you open questions and then just shutting up and letting you talk. Like it's a great leadership practice as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, great lesson.
It's a great way to build friends. Like if someone doesn't have friends, stop trying to be interesting out there. Just start being interested.
Yeah.
Like go and ask people questions, just ask about life. What did you learn about that? That's interesting. Tell me more. And before you know it, you'll have people being your friend because you're interested in them, and people are lonely and, they're looking for recognition and they're looking to tell their story. And it's just, great life lesson anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to be friends with someone who doesn't show any interest in them, do they? Well, maybe not nobody. I'm sure there's certain personality types that do enjoy that, but it's a weird one. I don't know why more people don't do that, but great lesson.
Yeah. I'm still learning. Yeah.
And that's the only way to be. I think we're all doing that if we're honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, last question for you,
sure.
Patrick. My favorite question, leadership heroes.
Leadership heroes.
So if you had to pick one person, but it can be anyone you can think of, so they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious, but someone who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. Who is that person for you and why?
Wow. I was thinking about how to answer this. There's some traditional things I could go back to. But I just, I want to point out someone who's been a good leader for me recently and just bring it more relevant for today. His name is David Lively. He's at Studio 98.ai. And he's the CEO there that leads that company as they're doing AI transformation. It's really a model of what I was looking at. One reason I wanted to hang out with him for 6 months in his company. And what stood out to me just wasn't his business successes. Like he built a 9-figure company, sold it off, built and sold several companies. It's really more how seriously he took clarity and ownership and accountability inside the organization. And he would push people to really define, what does done look like? You say it's done. What does that mean? And who owns outcomes and all those things. But in the same time, he cares deeply about people. So, for example, if someone realizes, oh, we don't need this person anymore, I watched him treat people like humans rather than just like a productivity unit. And so he would say, I understand I have to let you go, but I'm going to go and help you find another job, things like that. And then he taught me a lesson, which he said, in any leadership, you have to establish in a company 3 things before you get profit. And it's the same in life, I think. But first is authority, and then role, and then function, and then comes profit. And we jump into business or into an initiative or a whatever. We think, oh, I want to do this. I'm really good at that. But the question always comes back to authority. And I wish I'd known this 30 years ago. David taught me this 2 years ago. And it's like, man, this is 30 years too late, but it's maybe not too late. So, who actually has the authority and makes decisions? And then if I'm given a role, what do I have authority to do on my own? And what do I need an authority to help me make that decision? And what am I now accountable for? And it sounds like a very basic management, but I've not seen it done in any company well until I met David. So I think it was all of that balancing very high standards with humanity, and then watching him under tremendous pressure with AI, and how he still generally cares about people and the company and the company culture and things like that. And so it's kind of, hero is a strong word, but certainly a wonderful role model to follow. And so that would be David Lively.
It's a great answer because you actually know him and you've seen his leadership in action.
Yeah, I mean, I could come up with a traditional, like in Sunday school, the answer is always Jesus, right? I can say
we do get that one a lot, actually. Yeah,
and
for obvious reasons.
Well, that was my first thing. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such a great example, but it's hard to relate it into business, like where we are today, and that's kind of where I'm at, like life and business. I spend a third of my life at my desk, and I spend a third of my life lying horizontal in bed, and a third of my life taking care of stuff. So a third of my life, I'm in the business world, dealing with real people, real challenges, trying to provide value and make money and whatever. So I think it just brings it down to where most people are at.
Yeah. No, it's a great answer. Great answer. So that authority piece, I think, is quite interesting as well, because you said you've never seen it done in any company before. I think it probably is done. It's just that it's concentrated in very small places, isn't it? Quite often, like one person. Depends how big the company is, but I almost exclusively work with small companies and work in small companies, and it's usually focused in that one person, that CEO who won't release control for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it holds companies back. It does. There's no point having exceptional, well-qualified people if you don't give them the autonomy to make decisions about what they know best on.
Well, there's one thing that David showed me about just like a job description. He said, here's your job description. And everything in the job description had a number 1, a number 2, or a number 3 next to it. So I'm like, what's this about? Number 1 means you have to ask me for permission and advice before you do that. And then you will report on the answer. Number 2 is you have the authority to do it for yourself without asking me, but just tell me at the end that you have done it and what the result was. And number 3 was I can do it on my own without asking for permission, and I don't have to report what I did. I'm just expected to do it. So now through the week, I'm like, oh, I got to take care of this. Is that a 1, 2, or 3? Oh, that's a 3. I better ask David. David, can I do this? This is what I'm thinking. And so he'd go, yes, you can do it. Let me know how it goes. And so it's that I have authority to do it myself, or somewhere in between, or no, I don't. And that was really helpful for me. So.
Yeah. I mean, that clarity is important, isn't it? And great way of communicating it too. I'm super curious now, like what was the distribution between 1s, 2s, and 3s?
Oh, mostly are 3.
Okay.
I think the better the leadership, the more 3s you have, because you can't scale a company with a bunch of 1s. You can only scale with mostly 3s and some 2s, and very, very rarely a 1. So
yeah, that's sort of what I thought you were going to say. But yeah. Awesome. Well, Patrick, we've lost track of time. I always do this. Sorry about that. But thank you for staying with us for so long. Really enjoyed this conversation. Last little cheeky question I will sneak in at the end is if anyone in the audience wants to know more about you or the work that you're doing, is there somewhere they can go to learn more things?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website, aitransformationpartner.com. At the bottom there, you'll see my email, and you'll also see my LinkedIn connection. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Email me. I'm very approachable. And be happy to connect. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, I will pop those links in the show notes for people as well. That's it. That's more than we've got time for. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Patrick, thanks again for your time. Really enjoyed that conversation. We went down all sorts of avenues, and I barely covered any of the questions, which I think is always a good sign that it's been a great conversation and an excellent episode. Listener, viewer, if you've enjoyed hearing from Patrick today, you'd like to learn more about the work that he does and about him as well, you will find links to his website and his LinkedIn down in the show notes. As always, I encourage you, click on that, reach out to him, learn more things, and see if maybe he can help you with your understanding of AI in your business. And if you are one of those struggling technical leaders yourself, and you're looking for some guidance, for some support, for a peer of people who are going through it right now or recently have, who understand, who know that feel, who can provide you a bit of support and a friendly pair of ears, then do come and visit us at Integrity Leaders. The website to learn more is leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. Come and dip your toe in the water. We now have a 2-week free trial on all of the paid tiers, so you can test it out, see what you think, with no pressure, no obligation. And I look forward to seeing you there very soon. In the meantime, if you do have any questions about that, my LinkedIn details are also down in the show notes. Do connect with me, drop me a message, ask any questions, or if you just want to have a chat, always happy for that as well. So that's it for this week. Do join us again next week when I'll be chatting with my next guest, Frank Gessner, about finding your North Star, the role of core values in your leadership, in your business, in your career journey, in your life, how to find them, why they matter, and much more besides. So until then, as always, be a leader, not a boss.